Let us, without further ado, say a very good morning to Dan Hodges from the Mail on Sunday. Dan, very good morning to you.
Morning to you.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us. I see your feud with Julia Hartley-Brewer continues on Twitter. Basically, you're still of the opinion that the lockdown has indeed been lifted. You don't think we're in a lockdown anymore. But you did say that June the 21st probably was when everything was going to be lifted. It hasn't been. So what do you say now?
Well, on the first point on lockdown, I mean, we're clearly not in lockdown anymore. We can go out, we can go to restaurants, we can go to the pub, we can go to friends, we can go to family. We all know what it was like 3-4 months ago. So the idea we're still in lockdown is frankly ridiculous. You're right. I mean, I think, I certainly hoped that on the 21st we could have locked down. As you said, that was identified as a date where it would probably happen. We all know what's happened with the India variant. I actually
what
think,
has happened though?
view,
But what has happened with the Indian variant?
well, no, I was going to come on to that. My own view is there's too much emphasis on the India variant. I think a much bigger part of this and a much bigger problem is actually that there are a small but significant number of people who have been offered the vaccine and simply haven't taken it. And I think that is a big part of the problem we've got. And frankly, I'm not entirely sure what the government can do about that. Now, it's quite clear from looking at Boris in his statement yesterday. And obviously, people will debate this. I know people will say, oh, they're just going to keep putting it off forever. It's quite clear to me from Boris's statement. And more interestingly, actually, I thought from Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance, that at a maximum in 4 weeks' time, that will be it. Even Chris Whitty himself, who, as we know, is very hawkish on lockdown and was very instrumental in getting Boris to extend, said at that point the government will basically have done everything that it can do. And I think that's got to be it. And I think we have to be very clear now. This is it. There are 4 weeks left. You've got 4 weeks to get vaccinated. But if you don't get vaccinated in that time, then in July the 19th, that's it. Right. And I'm afraid...
you and I had this conversation. The last time, in fact, you and I spoke, we talked about the different communities which are up in the north, largely made up of ethnic minority communities, people who probably will not still take the vaccine no matter what. So we could possibly be in a month's time in exactly the same situation in terms of who hasn't been vaccinated.
Well, I think that is obviously a serious issue, which is why I think up until this point, I think that the government and others have been trying to use a carrot. I mean, they've been sort of, they've been reaching out, obviously to the BME communities, to others who are vaccine skeptics, saying, please, come on, please, we want you to do this. And I think the tone now has got to change, as you said in your intro, as obviously your listeners are saying, we've had enough of this now. We've been through enough of this. The vaccine is our way out. Everybody is being offered access to the vaccine. The government is basically on its knees begging people to take the vaccine.
Yeah, but they've taken this position, haven't they?
Programs, we've had outreach programs. We've had mobile vaccination centres. We've had mobile vaccination units. We've had people going door to door. I'm sorry, there are no excuses now. You have to get the vaccine.
Well, there are actually.
And
no, there are excuses because it's not a compulsory vaccine. And if people don't want to have it, they don't have to have it. And the idea that government policy is now pivoting on whether or not 100% of the population gets vaccinated is ridiculous. They can deal with 70%.
But Mike, and we all know what the implications are of people who don't get vaccinated.
Well, what are those implications?
Even if people don't get vaccinated, and get hospitalized,
yes,
even if they don't die themselves, even if they recover, one of the advantages at the moment is we're seeing even people in hospital are in hospital for shorter periods than earlier in the crisis. But even if they don't recover, and we know this, you've been one of the strongest people pointing this out, people in hospital are taking up a bed that could be used for somebody with another illness, could be used to treat somebody with cancer, could use to treat somebody with heart disease.
Well, they could be, but they're not at the moment, are they?
Exactly, and but Mike, what can we do? We can't. If somebody presents at hospital unable to breathe, we can't just leave them lying in the
No, of
hospital
course
corridor,
not.
can we?
No, but that's not
So
happening,
that's
Dan.
the point
But
I'm
it's
making
not
on
happening.
vaccination.
No, I know, but my point is that, you know, you cannot make government policy based upon, oh, we better not put anybody in a hospital in case somebody else needs a bed. You know, that's kind of, it's party playtime, you know, fantasy politics. You know, hospitals are there to deal with people who are sick. Now, there are many things that everybody could be told to do to avoid being hospitalised, right? Try not to fall off your motorbike. Try not to fall down a cliff. You know, try to be careful not to get drunk and bang your head. You know, but I don't really want to live in a country where that's my instruction for the day from the government, to make sure that we don't overwhelm the NHS. Now, I know in a perfect world what you're saying makes perfect sense, but we don't live in a perfect world, I'm afraid. And most of the people who are going into hospital with COVID right now are unvaccinated. I take that point. However, most of them are coming out, and they're not stopping anybody else from being treated. There's not that many of them.
But Mike, I mean, we're not talking about being in a perfect world. We're talking about in the real world. In the real world, if somebody doesn't get vaccinated, then gets COVID, and then gets hospitalised, the hospital bed they are lying in is a hospital bed.
No, I get that.
That cannot be used to treat someone else.
You've already made that point. I understand that, but the point is that there are still people who will need to be hospitalised for COVID for many reasons. I mean, some of the people who are still dying have been double vaccinated. Now, tell me that is somehow blocking another bed for somebody who should have it. You know, there's no guarantee in life that if you've been double vaccinated, you will not die from COVID, because you might, in fact, have other underlying health problems.
But Mike, I'm sorry. Yes, obviously,
right.
There is not 100% guarantee that if you get double vaccinated, you will not end up in hospital. But the vast majority of people who are ending up in hospital are not being double vaccinated. It's plain common sense. The more people that get vaccinated, the fewer people will go into hospital.
That's true. But the point is, we don't live in North Korea. Therefore, you can't make people be vaccinated if they don't want to be. So I'm afraid you're just going to have to bite that particular
Mike,
bullet.
You're right. We don't live in. Mike, you're right. We don't live in North Korea. No one is suggesting going round forcibly jabbing people. But
you've been accused of that in the past
on a radio program.
You have.
People have a responsibility to get vaccinated. All right.
Yes.
Because if they don't get vaccinated, then they will catch COVID. And they will take a hospital
the numbers,
bed
Dan,
from someone who will get cancer.
But the numbers game shows that this is a very small number now, and that's my point. You know, and we have to accept that there are going to be people who become ill for all sorts of reasons, not necessarily connected to COVID, who end up in hospital. But you can't start arguing about the fact that they should have been more careful, and therefore they should have prevented themselves from going into hospital by not doing whatever it was that got them there.
Yes, you can, Mike.
Well, you can if you're a mad dictator.
No, it's not being a mad dictator. It's been very, very simple. We've been in lockdown for 18 months. We all know the way to get out of lockdown.
I thought we weren't in it
via
anymore.
The vaccine.
You said we weren't in it anymore.
I'm using your argument, Mike.
I see.
But if we want to agree we're not in lockdown, fine. What I'm saying is,
are we in tier 2 then?
What I'm saying is, if we want this to end, right? If you think not being able to stand at a bar is lockdown, fine. The way
it's
to be
not
able
normality,
to stand at the bar again, the way to end. What's not normality?
I said what we have now currently is not normality. I cannot jump on a plane and go and see my mother in Connecticut, for example. That's not normal.
Exactly.
But if it's because some bloke in Burnley, hasn't been vaccinated, I'm afraid the government's barking up the wrong tree.
But Mike, as I said, if you want to get on the train, if you want an end to all of this, right, all the things you guys think are still locked down, the masks, not being able to stand at a bar, the route out of that is very clear. It's for people to get vaccinated.
Yes.
Now, you're absolutely right. We don't live in North Korea. So we can't go around jabbing people. But what we can do, what I can do, what you can do, what those of us who've got platforms, is to be very clear. Go out and get the vaccine.
Yes.
Let's stop this. Oh, well, it's my right, blah, blah, blah.
Well, it
is,
though. Yeah, I'm sorry. I know it might be a small thing to you, Dan, but for most people, having their own rights to make their own decisions about what goes into their body is entirely their right and should never not be.
Yes, of course it's their right, Mike, and no one is saying it's not their right. But what I'm saying is, and you would, I'm sure, agree with this in lots of other contexts, it's not just in society, it's not just about rights. It's about a balance of rights and responsibilities.
It is, and I think,
like I said, we're not going to come and we're not going to come and send hit squads to shove needles in your arms.
Well, I'm very glad to hear it.
You need to take responsibility.
Yeah, okay,
you need
all right,
to take
okay.
The
hold that thought for a moment, Dan, because we're just going to stop for a minute. We'll be right back. Dan Hodges is talking to us. It's the Mail on Sunday. He doesn't want to jab anybody forcibly, not quite. Anyway, we'll come back to this very shortly. This is Talk Radio. Daily Mail headline today: PM curbs could go on and on. We're talking to Dan Hodges from the Mail on Sunday. Dan, you make yourself popular as ever on Twitter. This one from Janet.
I'm sure.
Janet says, are we going to stop treatment for smokers, the overweight, alcoholics, drug users, people who play sport at the weekends and need hospital treatment, people who drive badly and crash their car? I'm not going to tell you what the last line says, but it describes you as something not particularly nice. But anyway, she's got a point, hasn't she? I mean, the point about all of this, Dan, is, as you said just before we broke there, it's all about a balance. Rights, responsibilities, government policy. And I think the government, if they're saying that they can only make this work and they can only lift restrictions if 100% of the population is vaccinated, that's never going to happen. So they're going to have to change that policy.
Well, no, I mean, I thought that was an interesting example, though. I mean, you said the lady, my big Twitter fan was right. Mm. I mean, she's not right. I mean, we don't simply say it's all right to drive your car badly, crash, and then end up in hospital. We introduce laws to prevent people from driving their cars badly.
Yeah, but they have accidents they can have accidents, Dan.
But we introduce laws to prevent that, Mike.
Well, you don't prevent accidents because more people die on the roads every year than die of COVID. Let's face it.
Mike, come on. This is supposed to be the home of sort of straight talk.
It's common sense. It is.
We don't say, Mike, we don't say it's all right for you to go out and crash your car and end up in
No, I'm not saying that. But people do die in car accidents through no fault of their own.
But Mike, come on. We don't say that. We have laws specifically to prevent that. We don't say it's all right to go out and take drugs and end up in hospital.
It's all right to smoke, isn't it? It's legal. That. It's legal to
smoke.
We don't
even, Mike, you may disagree with it. We don't even say it's all right to go out and smoke now. We have laws that prevent you smoking.
No, but it's not illegal to smoke, though.
No, it isn't, Mike. And no one's saying it's illegal not to take the vaccine. But what we do say is don't smoke.
But would you
don't take drugs?
Would you go but hang on, Dan. Would you say, and that's working really well, isn't it? Don't take drugs. There's more people taking drugs now than ever. You know, what would you say to somebody smoking a cigarette outside the office? You shouldn't be doing that because you have responsibilities not to take up a bed that might be used for somebody else in a hospital. You wouldn't do that, would you?
Well,
would you?
Mike, I mean, I would I say to people, I don't think you should smoke?
Yeah.
Yes.
Why?
I say it to members of my family all the time. Not just because I don't want them to end up in hospital. I don't want them to die of cancer.
Right.
Now, aren't
they being terribly irresponsible then?
But what? Smoking?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course they are. But there's a difference. There's a difference between that. I'm not saying they should be arrested. This is the difference, right? No one is saying people should be forcibly jabbed. But what we are saying...
You're trying to shame them into it, though.
Sorry?
You're trying to shame them into it, which is in some ways worse.
Well, no, Mike. I'm doing what I thought was a fundamental part of what we're all supposed to do. I'm giving my opinion.
No, you are,
my
yes.
opinion.
But as long as we know that it's your opinion and it's never going to happen.
What? Though, what's never going to happen?
That people are not going to be shamed into getting a vaccine, because I don't think we want to live in a country where people are constantly judging other people and looking at them as if they've done something terribly wrong because they haven't decided to get a vaccination. Well, let me ask you another question, right? Chris Whitty apparently is saying that he now thinks that all children should be vaccinated. Are you going to make your children get vaccinated?
No, I don't. I'm not. At the
Why
moment.
not?
I mean,
Isn't that irresponsible?
Sorry?
Isn't that irresponsible if everybody needs to be vaccinated?
Irresponsible for children?
No, you're telling me everybody needs to be vaccinated.
No, Mike. There are lots of things that I think. I'm sure we would all agree. There are lots of things that we think adults should do that we wouldn't say children should do.
Yeah, but if the government says,
if
the government recommends, or Chris Whitty as the chief medical officer recommends that this should happen, then you would presumably support it.
No, because I think we've seen, and I think we've talked about a lot of times on this program. I think I said this the other day, actually. I think one of the things we've seen throughout this is that the people who claim to be the experts have been proven at very numerous stages of this crisis not to be particularly expert.
Yes, and still it goes on.
And to an extent, in certain areas, you're right. Absolutely, it still goes on. I'm not standing here saying the experts are have had an amazing pandemic and been proved to be right. Quite the opposite. But that's a separate argument. I mean, I genuinely, I find it staggering, absolutely staggering, that at this stage of the crisis, we are still sitting here having an argument about whether or not people should get vaccinated.
Well, because it's a personal choice, Dan. It's a personal choice. I would never say you should do anything, Dan. It's not for me to tell you what to do, and neither is it for you to tell anybody else what to do.
Mike, with the greatest respect, I'm a great and avid listener of your program. You are literally sitting there saying you never say people should do something.
I don't tell them to take a vaccine, no.
No, not a vaccine, obviously, and that's why I'm bemused about that. But you frequently and very powerfully and very forcibly tell people to do things every day on your program. It's why we all love listening.
Yeah, but they don't have to do them. You know what I mean? That's the slight difference.
Of course they're not. They don't have to do them, and they're not going to have to do them because I tell them they should do them either.
All right. Well, listen. Sadly, we're out of time. I'm going to leave you with one more question. Final question for you, right? If we're no longer in lockdown, but we still haven't lifted restrictions, presumably the lockdown didn't work.
I'm sorry?
If we're no longer in lockdown, right, as you say, but yet we still can't lift all the restrictions, presumably the lockdown didn't work.
No, the lockdown did work, which is why we've seen.
Well, why can't I go to Portugal?
Dramatic fall in cases. Sorry?
Why can't I go to Portugal?
But you can't go to Portugal because there's a danger of bringing back COVID.
Well, we've already got it. Yeah, but we've got it here, though.
Cases will rise, and then we do have to go back into lockdown. The whole point is we don't want to go back into lockdown, do we?
Well, we're still in lockdown.
No, you say we're still in lockdown. We're obviously not
because
in lockdown.
We can't do anything that we want to do.
So you can't go to the pub?
I can.
You can't go to lunch?
I can't. No, listen to what I said. I can't do anything that I want to do. That doesn't mean I can't do some things that I want to do. It means I can't do whatever I want.
What you mean is you can't. No, Mike. I think what you mean is you can't do everything that you want to do.
I can't do that either.
Well, you can't. You can't do anything you want to do. You can. You can go to the pub. You can go to a restaurant. You can do lots of things you want to do.
Listen, we're going to the pub on Friday night. You should come along. We're going to watch England-Scotland. We're going to do a live show from there. Do you want to come?
I certainly do.
Consider yourself invited. We'll carry on then.
Brilliant.
Dan Hodges, thank you very much indeed. Mail on Sunday commentator, a man who doesn't think we're in lockdown anymore. A man who thinks that actually we are in fact free. But we're not, are we? Because you're going to tell me today, through the means of radio and television, that you're not happy. I know you are, because I know you're not.